Welcome to Cage Minds. Micah Frankel. Interviews are energized by Dubby. Hair is done by Barber, Gabe's Fades. If you're here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, they're at Lobo Plaza. That's the intersection of Coors and Central. They're at the northeast corner. Check them out. Gabe's going to be in action here, actually fighting soon. So we're going to have him on the My Fight show. Check that out live every Tuesday. We got Cage Minds live launch where we're going to go live for big BKFC, big UFC events and have people here in the studio. We also got right now one of the talks of BKFC, one of the sensations of the featherweight division. He's been here before to tell us how his era was forming. And man, I got to get you on more often. I can't believe it's already been a year since the last time we talked. Nathan Rivera, how you doing?
Good, man. Good, Mike. I appreciate you having me on, bro. It has been a while, dude. It's been a while. What a busy year it's been, man, for both of us. Had a couple fights since then, had a couple pullouts, but all around, man, it's been a wild year since the last time we talked.
So before we get to the fights, congratulations. There was the nuptials. I hear that professionally, you're busy as all could be. So how's life before we get into the imaginary world of fighting?
Dude, life is great, man. Life is great. Like you were saying, work is busy. I hope one day to be done with that type of busy and replace it with a different type of busy of being a full-time fighter. But until that time comes, we gotta put food on the table. I've recently bought a home with my wife. Recently got married, so my life outside of fighting has been awesome, and it's been a blessing to have all of these things happen in my life while I'm still pursuing my fighting dream.
Did you take off from camp, or did you have a camp going on when you were preparing for the wedding?
I did. I did. I was supposed to have fought like a month before my wedding in September. And it was supposed to happen in Canada. Contract signed, everything. Not to get into it too much, but I signed the contract, and then about 2 weeks later, the opponent that I was supposed to fight, don't know if they signed the contract or not, but they asked for a whole bunch more money. Um, and then eventually, like, the fight fell through just because it was in Canada. The visas were hard to deal with over there. It was already a smaller show. But that was supposed to be a month before my wedding. Then I got married. I booked another fight, which was last weekend. Um, did the wedding, went on the honeymoon. My wife, which was my fiance throughout that camp. Now my wife, I mean, she's the best. She gives me all the time I need to go and chase this dream. And even on our honeymoon, I'm like, we're sitting on the beach, and I'm like, I got to get a workout in real quick. So I'll do like a hit workout on the beach and keep my weight down and still watching when I eat a little bit. But luckily, like, I train year round. I train year round in the gym. Even when my hands are banged up a little bit and I can't do much, I'm still there getting the work in. So whenever I need to take a week off, and I still found gyms to train down there, but whenever I need to take a week off, I'm able to do that.
All the faith in the world in you, but that's risky. Wanting to jump into, I'm like, that would have been the one fight where you got cut. That would have been
Yeah.
it because I got a buddy that wasn't supposed to be sparring, and his wedding came up, and very last round, this dude ends up with like a just a scratch that's right there, bright front and center for all the photos. I just felt like he's like, I knew when I got to that last round, I shouldn't have done it.
Yeah, I mean, well, and I told my wife that too, of course, like my mom, her mom, they were like, you can't have any cuts of this and this. And I was like, let's not pretend like I don't do this as a job. This is my job. Sometimes it happens. I've had a great track record. I haven't had any stitches in bare knuckle. So I was telling them I think I'll be all right. But we didn't even have to deal with that at all, and I ended up going to the wedding with no fight, so we're good to go.
And then you look pretty clean coming out of last weekend. What is it about your style, your reaction, your defensive strategy that has kept you so clean in a sport that is very messy?
Man, I think it's a couple things, right? I think the people who are MMA fighters that do bare knuckle, I think they have a problem because they're still in that MMA mindset. And I think that the boxers who do bare knuckle and they're still in that boxing mindset, I think that they have a problem as well. So I think that's part of why I'm so successful is because I don't want to be a boxer that's doing bare knuckle. I don't want to be an MMA fighter that's doing bare knuckle. I want to be a bare knuckle fighting champion. That's it. That's my goal. That's what my training is surrounded by, and that's the goal of the team. All my team is on point with that same idea. And then also the fact that I was blessed with like a 74.5 inch reach. I think that is great for 45. I haven't fought anybody with a taller reach, or with a longer reach. I'm like average height for 45. I think I'm like 5'10", 5'11", around there. But the reach definitely helps out. I think there's only like one or two guys that I've seen in bare knuckle with a longer reach, and it's not by much. So I think, of course, that helps me. They make it hard with that 16-foot ring. It's like they want us to get cut up and sliced and diced. But we've been fortunate, man. The team I had behind me over at American Top Team, Team Lima, Coach Brantley, all my training partners, Coach Diego. Um, it's hard not to do great when you got those kind of guys in your corner.
Is it take a moment of adjustment going from the larger ring to that smaller one?
Yeah, I going into this fight, I had four fights. Two of them were in the big ring, two of them were in the small ring. Um, once you really start going, well, let me rephrase this. It depends on the opponent, right? If I have a short guy who wants to get on the inside, it takes two steps for him to get there. Two steps for him to rush in, and then I'm there, right? So it definitely is different. We have a 20-foot ring in our gym, that we can practice in, so it's a good in between the 24-foot and then the 16-foot. But man, it's something about somebody sprinting at you. You get a little grimy in there. You can't keep it as clean as you might want. But man, it's fun. And this one, my opponent was trying to rush in, and I was able to counter on his forward, movement. So it worked out for my favor. But yeah, it definitely is not normal. I've never. I mean, 16 foot is crazy small. I remember my first fight in that ring was their debut. They're debuting that ring, and I didn't know until the day of. They were like, "Guys, we're debuting our small ring at 16 feet," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is very small."
BKFC, they once let me jump into the larger ring to take like a selfie that I was in there. They never let me get in the smaller one, but I did a BKB event and Cody East was fighting on it. And right after the weigh-ins, that a 5,000 is like, yeah, you can get in there. Cody was like, help me measure this distance real quick. He's the big old heavyweight. I get in there. I'm only 5'7". All the space was gone between the two of us. I was like, there's your visual for what it's going to be like when another heavyweight gets in
Yep.
here with you. We're looking around like, this is crazy. I'm tiny compared to him. And I'm like, I got nowhere to
Dude.
run from you, dude. I don't know what you two are doing in here. So I could imagine that same kind of feeling the first time you step in that 16 fitter where you're like, okay. And then the other guy gets in there and you're like, wow, we're doing
Oh
this.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I go around, circle the ring when I walk in, and I fist bump everybody, and I like take one step, and I'm like already at my opponent's corner. I'm like, "What's up?" It's very quick. And yeah, dude, the heavyweights in there, man, it's like two caged animals, bro. When you get two heavyweights in that 16-foot ring, man. So it's exciting. I mean, what they wanted to do was to bring more action, and I mean that thing does it, man. There's a lot of finishes that night, when we fought in Michigan, and there always is, man. There always is a lot of finishes in BKFC, but when you put it in that little ring, I mean, I don't know the percent. It probably jumps it up to like 90% finishes.
You're 4-0. The phone rings. Tommy's coming off of fighting in Dubai for the title. What was your reaction to getting this kind of opportunity? I'm sure it was one you've been hollering for.
Yeah, I have been actually quite some time. Ever since I saw his first fight, when I signed to BKFC, the homework began. I started watching homework or film on everybody. I have notes on a lot of people, especially people that I thought I would run into. Tommy was one of those guys that I wanted to fight even before I called him out publicly in Atlanta after my debut in my home state there. I called him out. Out of all the people that I called out, he was the only one that responded back and was like, "Let's do it. I'm down." Like respectfully, and I was like, "Let's go." Tommy comes to fight. So whenever my manager called me and was like, "If you could pick anybody," because he knows me, he knows I'm a sicko with the notes and all that. He knows I watch everybody. He's like, "If you could choose anybody, who would you want?" And I started naming off people, and he's like, "Yeah, you got him." And I was like, "I got who?" And he's like, "You got Tommy. They want to know if you want to fight him." I'm like, let's go. Send it over, man. Let's go. So I was excited because it had been like a year since I called him out, and I was watching him. I watched his last fight. Since I called him out, he had two fights, and I watched both of them, watching him live, and I just knew I was at another level than him. And it was interesting because I was in the back, and I was like so confident. I was so confident that I almost like was thinking to myself, am I like overly confident? Like, is this false confidence? Because I wasn't nervous. I wasn't very nervous. And then I started getting nervous to the fact that I wasn't nervous. And I was like, holy crap. You know what I mean? But it all worked out. And it was interesting, man, because I was so confident, but I was so, Tommy was dangerous. He had a bunch of finishes. He fought for a title. He was where I wanted to be. And I was where he wanted to be. At the time he was fighting for the title, I wanted to be there. And then now I was in the rankings. He got us out of the rankings, and he wanted to be where I was. So we were both hungry. We were both hungry, and we really wanted that win. So I think that's why it made it such a great fight.
Taking a step back even more, because you're a student of this game, to a lot of people, Tommy was a surprise when they announced that he was going to fight Kai. Was that one that took you by surprise?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't blame the guy. I know that over in other countries and stuff like that, especially debuting, you want to have some of the best fighters. And at the time, Tommy was 4-0. Kai was like, I don't know, maybe 7-0 or something like that. So two undefeated guys. It looks great. And he was just he was the lucky guy that got the call for the title. Definitely was like thinking to myself, there's a lot more deserving people to be fighting for the title, I thought, but I don't make the rules, man.
Yeah, I'm not trying to go back and harsh on Tommy. I just knew that for a lot of people, that was a name that it was like, this kind of felt like there was a column of guys, and this
Yep.
name got picked kind of a little more surprisingly, not wanting
Yeah.
to trash on him. You get this victory. What were you most proud of in the way that you performed? Because it was stellar.
Yeah, I was happy that I got to show some striking moving backwards. Like technically, I like that. I like that I'm getting more reps in that little cage. And Tommy had never been finished before. So I was happy to put him out. Um, I Yeah, I mean, I was pleased with the outcome. I was a little bit upset in the back. I mean, this has been I'm always like this. My last three fights, Justin Street, Alex Castro, and Tommy Strydom, I've been just distraught at my performance before I watch the film. I feel like I'm sloppy and all that stuff. And then I look back and I'm more at peace with it. But I want to be perfect in there. I want to have a flawless performance, and it is hard when that's 16-foot ring. But overall, I was happy.
You already brought it up way earlier. I'm gonna go back to it. Not wanting to be an MMA fighter in bare knuckle, not wanting to be a boxer in bare knuckle, but wanting to be a bare knuckle fighter. It's an interesting theory that because or thesis because it's a brand new sport. We're rehashing an old sport. So how creative and inventive do you feel you and your team have had to be with literally making a training system for bare knuckle? Because there's not a book on that right now.
Yeah, and what one of the cool motivating things is that when I think about bare knuckle, it being 7 years old, the oldest sport really there is, but I mean, before that, BKFC, the company being 7 years old, there's not, you have a couple greats that'll go down in history as like these were like the founding fathers, the Mount Rushmores of BKFC, and it makes me very happy that I'll be considered one of those. You got some people that have been in it like since BKFC 1 and 2 and 3 that are still fighting. And it's just cool to be like almost like a pioneer for a new sport. And the training, I didn't have to put a ton of thought into it. It kind of just happened naturally. And then you tweak some things here and there. I train at an MMA gym. I've always said that I think bare knuckle is a little bit more similar to MMA than boxing. With the clinching, with the style, most of the guys you fight have an MMA background, right? So you don't just lose those habits that they have. So when I'm sparring all of these people, if they're wearing 16-ounce gloves, if they're wearing, 8-ounce like small boxing gloves or puffy MMA gloves or whatever, these guys are still giving me such good looks in the gym. So what I did is I pretty much just swapped. I go into the like Coach Brantley's Muay Thai class, and I have a couple people that will box with me. So I'll just supplement all of the training to punches. I do all my sparring, boxing sparring, of course. I do like in my training, I always finish or start or have some rounds in the middle of just pummeling. Right. So I take the gloves off and I have somebody that is a good wrestler. And all we do for rounds and rounds is we just fight for underhooks, practice turning the body, because it's a big part of the game. We practice clinching up, we practice fighting for the underhooks or separating and shooting off the break. So like we have definitely, I think we've cracked the code when it comes to how to train for this stuff with keeping your hands intact. I don't do like knuckle conditioning. I don't do any kind of punching a brick wall. My hands, they take a whooping in practice, and that's what happens if you're a fighter that punches hard. MMA, boxing, bare knuckle, of course, but MMA and boxing, some of the heavy punchers, they experience the same injuries and obstacles that I experience. So it's been cool to like kind of come up with our own game plan of like how the camp's gonna go.
You brought up the knuckle conditioning. That was a very big thing the first couple years with BKFC, different regiments. And then I've started talking to some other guys who were MMA fighters, and they're like, I knocked out guys with 4 ounce gloves. I think I'm good. I don't think I need to. Talk to some boxers. They're like, I was knocking the wind out of guys with 12-ounce gloves on. I don't think I need to go into that. They're more thinking about the technical side. So do you feel that it has kind of seen a transition in that thought process where it might have been overblown how much people were doing the conditioning?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it looks aesthetically cool when you're doing that. And it like some parts of your like when you think of it, it makes sense, to condition your knuckles. You give these little micro fractures in your hands to like build up the calcification of your hands. But the truth is like you don't really feel it when you're in there. Afterwards you feel it for sure. But what I focused on more so than conditioning the knuckles is like how I punch. It has changed a little bit. Sometimes I would punch up because you have a boxing glove on or you have an MMA glove on. Now a lot of my punches they come straight down or straight. They could come a little bit down or straight through instead of coming up. Um, Hitting with those parts of your knuckles, it doesn't feel very good and it kind of yanks your hand back down. So yeah, there's definitely a little bit of shift that I've experienced. Um, when it comes to like hitting pads and hitting the bag and stuff like that. But overall, from an MMA fighter to a bare knuckle fighter, there wasn't a massive transition in the punching.
As we come off the victory, and well, real quick, actually, that card was ridiculous. I'm like, that
Yeah.
could have been a numbered card with the co-main event and the main event that it was. Some well-known guys that have truly performed huge. Um, what did you think of that experience? Another new market. I think this is at least the third or fourth market that BKFC is taking you to.
Yeah, man, I love going around fighting. I mean, I flew to Philadelphia to have a conversation with Dave Feldman because it was before the Atlanta fight. I knew I was going to sell a lot of tickets, which I did. And I was afraid that I was going to be pigeonholed into being the Atlanta guy because every time that they come to Atlanta, I'll sell a lot of tickets. And there was problems with the tickets. I was only allotted like 3.5 weeks to sell tickets, and I was very fortunate enough to sell like just under $50,000 of tickets. So it's not, compared to the other numbers that some of these other guys are doing, it's nothing crazy. But for 3 weeks, I knew that they would want me on an Atlanta card always. So I flew to Philly to have a conversation with Dave, and I was like, man, look, I'm going to be able to move a lot of tickets. I really want you to to ship me out and fight all over the place. I want these experiences with my team. I want to fight often. I can't just be waiting around for once or twice a year in Atlanta. And he was very receptive to that, and he kept his word. Dave is he's a busy guy. He has so much going on, but when Dave says he's going to do something, he does it. So it was very cool that he kept his word on that. I opened up Atlanta, right? Like debuted in Atlanta. I debuted I want to say, I don't know if I debuted the Michigan. I mean, I definitely debuted the Michigan. I don't know if it was Virginia that I debuted there. I don't think so.
I don't know if they had been there or not, but you did fight on the Manassas card. That might have been their debut. I'm not sure.
I don't remember, but I know I definitely opened up Michigan and Georgia, and it was cool, man, because the energy is like it's different. These people have been watching on TV, um, and they're like very excited. You know, the real hardcore fans were very excited to experience this. Like Florida, people that go to bare knuckle fights in Florida every other weekend. You know what I mean? But to go to somewhere where they're like fresh, oh man, it was awesome. Like the amount of fans I talked to outside the venue afterwards that were saying like, dude, this was our first event. We want to like go fly to the next one. It was so fun to be a part of that experience for these people. Was just so cool. Because I remember my first time, my first bare knuckle fight. After my fight, I was watching the fights in the crowd after with my people, and I was like, dude, this is freaking awesome. I was like falling in love with it as it was going on. So it was really cool to be a part of that for some of these guys.
You bring up earlier being a pioneer of the sport and possibly putting your face on that Mount Rushmore. You look up at that mountain, who are the other three faces?
Man, I mean, you got to think Christine Faria. You know, that's a bad lady right there. That is a bad woman. And she, I mean, I don't even know what her record is, like 11-1 now. You know what I mean? Just crazy. I want to get like that. You know, you think of people like her, you think of people like, um, for BKFC specifically, like Luis Palomino. That's another guy that's just like, just been through it, you know, had so many fights. The Juggernaut, right? Like some of these big guys that have fought just like 12, 13 times in bare knuckle. It's crazy, you know. And then there are other bare knuckle fighters that have fought a lot, like the other name, Sweeney. You know, he's fought a lot. I think he's fought like 30 times in bare knuckle, which I don't know how this guy is able to make a fist anymore. But he, you know, he's just one of those guys too, not necessarily pioneer for BKFC, but pioneer for the sport of bare knuckle. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, with Jimmy Sweeney, I believe he's like 29-7, 29-8, something like that.
Crazy.
I remember Dave recently talking about it. Some of you guys that are starting off in the sport, you know, with the 5-0, you guys are not just the pioneers. Pioneers probably a nicer word than us saying the guinea pigs, because we're going
Yeah.
to see how long can you guys really, who are committed to this sport, compete in this sport, whether it's the hands, the scar tissue. Um, is it possible to get more than 3 fights a year in this sport with just how messy it is?
Well, I'll say I think it really depends on the fighter. Um, I've never taken more damage than I have when I was a MMA fighter, just training every day. I mean, it puts your body through something different, man. Like it really does. Not even the fighting, like the fighting definitely does, but the training is so vigorous. You have to do your strength and conditioning. You have to do your road work. You have to do your wrestling, jiu-jitsu, MMA practice. You have to do your kickboxing, your Muay Thai, your boxing. You have to, I mean, there's so much that you have to do, and your body does take a beating, especially from the jiu-jitsu. Um, a lot of injuries happen from jiu-jitsu more so than striking, and that's just like across the board, you know, especially if you're an MMA fighter. And my camps, I mean, the shape that my body has been in since switching to bare knuckle has been awesome, man. My shoulders, my back, my knees, like all of that stuff that used to ache and give me injuries all the time from MMA training doesn't happen anymore. Of course, there's a trade off, right? Your hands take more time to heal. Um, but man, I just personally, like, I don't fight with my face. And there are some fighters that do, and I think their career will be shorter. Superficially, like, because you know, boom, there goes the scar tissue. You know, it starts opening right up. Nate Diaz is a perfect example of that, right? Like he was saying that he wanted to fight in BKFC, but he just never knew. He was like, I just don't know if it would even be worth it. I just have so much scar tissue, you know? Um, so I don't think that. I think that the superficially the fighters that fight with their face will have a shorter career, and then also of course like the brain trauma and stuff like that. But man, I don't get hit a whole lot, and it's a blessing. You know, I've never had a stitch put in my face from bare knuckles, so never had a stitch put in my face from any combat sport. So defense is a huge part of my game, and it always will be because I want to ensure that I can have a long career.
How much have you kind of picked apart Austin Trout's game so far in bare knuckle? Because I've been amazed with his defensive paralysis. And it seemed like for the first couple fights, especially his pivot, his ability to pivot on a foot, turning circles, was giving guys a fit.
Yeah, he's one of those guys too that when he transitioned from boxing to bare knuckle, I mean he like fully I'm not too familiar with Austin Trout, but I know that he like fully immersed himself in the training, in the wrestling, in the rule set. Like he wasn't like I'm gonna be a boxer but do a bare knuckle fight. Like he really switched over his training, and it was really cool to see.
To get your face on that Mount Rushmore that we mentioned a moment ago, some would argue you probably got to take Kai Stewart's face off of there. You can't jump past the champion. Are we getting to a point where you think that fight's going to come together at some point?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe he's one of those guys that he's put his time in. I think he was the first featherweight champion, the inaugural champion. So, and he's defended it multiple times. 8-0, 8-0 with two finishes. So, a snooze fest to say the least. No, I'm just playing. I'm playing. No, I'm just kidding. No, he's a good champion, I think, for the company. He's not scared. He takes hard fights, and I think that's what makes him pretty solid upstairs, definitely confident, definitely durable, and with great cardio. But I think when you talk about replacing his face with my face up there, I would think that I would have to do things that he hasn't done, right? Last weekend, I did something that he hasn't done. I put away Tommy Strydom. He went to a decision with Tommy Strydom. So, like, these different things that keep happening. I have half the fights that he has, and I've doubled his finish rate. Like these little things that keep happening. Where as my career progresses, it will naturally happen. The shift over, and I think it's already begun with last weekend's performance.
He's the champion. It'd only be natural. Do you fantasize about that fight? Do you find yourself kind of thinking about if he was the opponent, how you would handle him? Because you're probably wanting to think about how you would beat the best.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that the best don't hold the belt in the 45 division, and that's just the truth. I think, like Edgar Plazaola, I called out Edgar Plazaola because I think he's one of the most dangerous guys in the division. A lot of finishes, very strong, very durable, and he is one of those guys that he believes in himself a lot. Like you can see it when he fights; he really believes in himself. So I want to test myself against those guys. I want to test myself against the best, and then I can go get the easier fights like Kai Stewart afterwards.
Do you think you'll get to Edgar before he gets to Kai? I don't know what they have brewing. Dave keeps teasing us that there's something big coming for Kai. So I almost feel like it's again going to be not one of the names in the column we'd pick, which does it ever kind of frustrate you looking at the rankings, thinking, hey, we have a group of journalists, media members that help put these together, but what do they really mean if we're going to play off the board?
Yeah, and I think it can. I think it could be frustrating for some fighters. I understand if he were to pick like a big money fight. I'm 5-0. I don't have a long career in the UFC. If he wanted a money fight, that was like a very like a Jeremy Stevens, for instance, like somebody like that, right? It's hard to turn that down. That's a really exciting fight, and I wouldn't blame him for a second for taking a fight like that over a 5-0 guy that has one pro MMA fight outside the company. But at the same time, the rankings are there for a reason. So I would hope that we can make that happen. I don't think Edgar's gonna accept a fight with me, and that's not a knock against him. I called him out in Atlanta, nothing. I've called him out publicly again, nothing. This time was the first time. I think this is the third or fourth time I've called him out that he's responded, and his response was um, pretty much no. His response was talk to David Feldman after I get my title shot. And then his other response was, the next fight will be for the belt, which I don't blame him. He's the number one contender. Why would he fight a really risky fight backwards to possibly lose his shot at the title? And especially when Dave has already said Edgar Plazaola's next fight will be for the title. I'd hold out too. I'd hold out. I can't blame him. I say I would hold out, but I just love to fight. So I don't know if I would really hold out. I love to fight. So if they said, "Hey man, one more," and then you could fight for the title, I'd be like, "Yeah, let's do it." I like getting after it.
So it feels like you understand Edgar Kai, that might not be the next guy in front of you. Do you have someone that you're eyeing that feels more realistic?
Yeah, man. if I'm not going to fight Edgar or Kai, which would be up for me, right? I would have to be fighting backwards, which is there's only a couple options, right? If you're going up, it's either the belt or the number one contender. And if I don't get those fights because they're booked up or they have other things going on, because and that's the other thing is I don't think Kai's scared, and I don't think Edgar is scared for a fight. They're very formidable opponents. Like they are good. They're good guys. They're good fighters. So I don't think it has to do with being scared. I think it just has to do with whatever the money is right. You know, both of these guys want to start a family or have a family, and they want to put some money in the bank, and I can't blame them. I want to do the same thing. So, um, I if I'm gonna fight backwards, like I was saying, man, it's got to be an exciting fight. It's got to be something that wakes me up, um, and presents a challenge, right? One of the people that did that was Tommy, right? My biggest thing was I want to put this guy away because the champ couldn't do it, right? So then I did that. Now there's another guy that's tough as nails, and he's from across the pond, and that's Gary Fox. Former world champion. That's something that I want under my belt. I want to fight a guy who was a world champion. I know he vacated his belt to fight Edgar Plazola, and then Edgar couldn't put him away either. And that's another one of those things where I go, all right, if I'm going to go backwards, I want to fight a formidable guy. I want to fight somebody who is tough, who is a really good fight, that was a world champion, that the number one guy couldn't put away. So if I beat a guy who was a world champion and I put him away the way that Edgar Plazola couldn't, I think that puts me in a pretty good standing.
Dave spoke on it before. How do you feel hearing and seeing? Again, we have you so high up in the rankings. You've acknowledged it 5-0 in the sport, but really as a professional, not as much recognition as some other names. So we've even heard Dave kind of talk about it with Perdomo. I wouldn't mind, and he said he wouldn't mind if that guy's 10, 12-0 before he fights in the title so that people know him. How do you feel about that possibly being in that same scenario, getting enough fights that people know you, but having to look at your number in the rankings and wondering when is it going to be known? When are you going to be known enough to get that title fight?
Yeah, I mean, I trust that me and Dave talk on a personal level, right? We were speaking on the phone a couple days ago and talking about what the future looks like, and I trust his vision for the company and for myself, for my career and stuff like that. I have great coaches and great managers that also have my best interest in mind, that really look out for me. So, um, here's my main goals, right? My main goals in this company are to be financially stable for me and my wife, so I don't have to punch a clock anymore, and I can just spend time with her, start a family, and be a fighter full time, and to eventually hang a world title on the wall. Those are my main goals in this sport. And so if I have to wait to get to 8-0, 9-0, 10-0 to get that title shot, as long as my bills are getting paid, man, I'm happy, man. I mean, the company takes care of me, and I take care of the company, I think, the best I can as well. I think it becomes a problem when you start thinking the company works for you, or the company start thinks, or the other way around. You start thinking that they work for you or you work for them. This is a partnership, right? The BKFC is investing in me, and I'm investing into the BKFC. We're growing together, and I think that's where people get it wrong. They start thinking they're owed something, and it's not the case. So I'm excited to grow with the company. I don't want to be here for like a couple of fights and then be like, see ya. I want to be here for the long run. So whatever that looks like, I'm ready to go.
I guess the biggest question then is how long do you feel it's going to be before you quit the job, before you are literally able to just wake up, train, home, have that fighter lifestyle?
You know, I God opens a lot of doors in my life. God opens these doors for me that I sometimes I don't even know how the connection was made, or how I've been so blessed to have these opportunities. And I walk through these doors that He opens in faith, and it's been so crazy because I've been telling everybody, because I just feel it in my heart that I think that this fight that I just fought with Tommy, I think that was the last fight that I'm going to be like a full-time employee somewhere else. Um, it's a scary feeling to walk away from a regular job, a pretty good job that pays the bills, but I just know that I can be so much. I think I think that God's going to open some doors in the next couple of months so that by the time I fight for my next, by the time I fight Gary Fox or Edgar or whoever, I think I will be a full-time fighter, and I can't wait to like show the performances that I'll be able to put on from being a full-time fighter.
I'm sure there's a lot of maintenance, a lot of stuff going on at the house, but I feel like once you start getting your office together, if you haven't yet, the envelope, the newspaper, Edgar's poster, if you don't have an extra copy of all of those hanging, you kind of be disappointed. I feel like you need one of those keepsakes from each of those creative moments that you've put together.
Yeah, man, I got a lot of those different things. I have a couple things that like I've made that I was like game day decision where I go, you know what, I'm not gonna do that. And I switch it up. So I have a couple things that are very meaningful. Um, One of the most important things I want to hang on the wall is the belt, And I have one thing it's in the other room. It's framed, and it's a pair of my very first hand wraps ever for my first MMA fight. And then right next to it, I have my very first check from like the local scene fight for my pro debut for like I don't know, $400 or something like that. Like I have that frame there, and I really want to put that on the wall. It's kind of like a remembrance, remembrance where I came from, remembrance that it's like a symbol that like I did this for free for so long. I did it for pennies for so long because I love it. So like don't get it twisted that you think you need to have all this money and do this and that, and like don't forget that you love this sport, you love this game. So having those two things, my first hand wraps, my first check, and then that the three things, then the belt on the wall, I'll be good.
So this isn't directly a question for you. This is more telling the fans if they're not, this is the moment to get on the train. This is the most exciting part of a fighter's career. And actually, you probably missed it with these first 5 fights. A lot of fight fans, we love the fights, but there's this tendency, it seems like, to not really pick a fighter or be on the guy's bandwagon until he has the title. And the climb is such a glorious part. And watching your climb is magnificent.
No, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. I think if I just keep doing what I'm doing, which is if I keep doing what I'm doing, which is doing what others can't, I think it's inevitable. At the end of the day, like I'm going to, put away Tommy Strydom, the only one to put him away. I'm going to put away Gary Fox, something that the number one contender couldn't do. Like all of these things that are lining up. If I keep doing that, I think it'll be before we know it the next time that we'll be having an interview. In the next 2 or 3 times, I think we'll have the belt right up there, right on the wall.
We'll have to do the next one a lot sooner. A year was
Let's
way
do
too
it.
long.
Let's do it, bro. Let's do it.
Nathan Rivera, the Rivera era. It was great getting to talk to you, sir.